Okay, so welcome. Um, it always feels special to do these, I wouldn't call them classes exactly. They are places of learning, but they also, for me, it feels like a place where the creative spirit can kind of come through me into some kind of form that everyone else who wants to find out about these asteroids can. What's really amazing is I've actually had two dreams leading into this one. Um, and that's never happened before. And then I did a reading for someone who this morning who actually had um, real powerful connections to all of this. So it was interesting kind of having this whole stream of things happening. So some of you came to this creative writing ceremony the other day, where the Venus Moon seventh gate landed, which was Gene Key 30, and we were looking at desire and curiosity. And we were working with Moth, first of all, who is the fear creature for Gene Key 30 that leads from desire to lightness to rapture. And this idea of like the moth being drawn to the flame and getting your wings burnt. And so we all started writing on that. And actually, what's come out since, it didn't come out in that class, that writing, but it's been really fascinating in how these bodies that I'm going to talk about today, which are Chiron, Chariklo, and Okyrhoe, they're all a family. So that tells you something, that this is also about ancestral healing, these particular bodies. Um, and this kind of deep desire to heal others and heal ourselves, I guess. So that's kind of feels at the heart of these particular bodies. So I wanted to share a story about Chiron before I do the presentation. Chiron is called the wounded healer. And one of the first astrologers to study and write about Chiron, there's this amazing astrologer called Melanie Reinhardt, who's from Zimbabwe. It's like her entire astrological life has been spent on this one body called Chiron. I think she wrote a book called Chiron the Rainbow Bridge, which is a really excellent book. And I don't have the book anymore, so I couldn't look up on it again. But there's something in the book that always sticks with me. And it's a chapter, I think it's called Wilderness of Spirit. And I'm really feeling this wilderness of spirit at work right now. And we've got Chiron conjunct the North Node in Aries. So this is all about, Aries is this fire energy, the adventurer, the pioneer. And this idea of wilderness of spirit is at the heart of healing through Chiron. I kind of really feel that through my own experience, which is what I'm really sharing with you here. So some of you will know that I'm from South Africa and I grew up in the apartheid years. And the word apartheid means to keep separate. So in these years I grew up, you couldn't go to the same school as a Black person, get on the same bus. Even shops had different entrances. And I guess in America, they had that in the South. But that's the kind of conditions I grew up under, which is why this story I'm going to tell you is so extraordinary, because people were so forcibly kept apart. So in the year that Chiron was discovered, which was 1977, and I think within a few days of the discovery, there was a conference in South Africa, which was all about this African guy who was a shaman working with a white guy who was like a ranger, and they had come together to form a company as equals. Now, the idea that this would happen in South Africa at that time, this is the year of the Soweto riot, so it's like the heart of apartheid years. The idea that a Black person and a white person would form a company together as equals was like completely unknown at that time. And yet these two guys, they came together, and their whole thing was that they believed that if they took people out on journeys into the wilderness, they would find this really deep healing in their souls. And it's always just struck completely true to me. And somehow the fact that they chose to do it together it says something about the unity of humanity. The idea of inferior and superior is really an illusion. And when we get out there in the wilderness, which can mean different things to different people, really, then these ideas of who we think we are tend to fall away. And I just want to say that about wilderness, because for some of us, I know, go walking in the mountains, and so going for a walk in the mountains doesn't seem that challenging, but for someone else, that would be really going beyond their boundary. Whereas, you know, for some people, going on a train to a city might be the wilderness they're really afraid of. So really, this thing about wilderness, there is something about being out there in nature, really connecting with the earth. But there's something that came up in Moth as well the other day, which is about putting ourselves outside of our comfort boundaries, so that we're kind of building up our resilience to being outside of our comfort zone. And I think that's going to be more and more important in these, you know, predicted chaotic years as we approach 2027 as the big mutation point. But we're already in the chaos, the biological pressure, the pandemic. You know, we may get more of these things, and all these things mean we have to really start to feel comfortable outside of our known world, and that's what I feel Chiron is really pushing us towards. Okay, so I wanted to begin there, and I'm going to put my presentation up and share a bit more. I'm on the wrong page here. Go back to the beginning. Okay, so that's my introduction. So wilderness of spirit, this is the name of these bodies, Chiron, Chariklo, and Okyrhoe. They're all on Taraka, which is TARAKA.io, which is Kim Gold's website. And if you put in your details, you can find out for free where these three bodies lie in your chart. In most birth charts these days, Chiron comes up. Really important if you're into healing, which I know most of us in this class consider ourselves healers in some way, then it's really great to know where your Chiron is and the specifics of your healing abilities. Okay, so this is an image of the orbits of the planets. So you can see in the center here that most planets orbit in quite a circular way around the sun. But we can see here, this is Chiron, this huge thing coming out here, that you can almost feel the wilderness of spirit, can't you, in this extraordinary kind of leaving the safety of the boundaries of the solar system and stretching out. So these orbits are much more egg-shaped than round, and they tend to cross the orbits of a number of different planets. So what is really of note with Chiron is that it firstly crosses the orbit of Saturn, which is a very kind of underworld constricted, painful energy. That's the wound, really. And then it crosses on its outer part of its orbit. It also crosses the orbit of Uranus, who is the liberator. So we have this idea of a centaur. Chiron was the first one to be discovered in 1977 and was designated this new kind of body called a centaur. So we have asteroids following the discovery of the centaurs. We also have these trans-Neptunian bodies, which we sometimes do, which are out beyond Neptune and Pluto and Uranus as well. But hopefully that gives you a sense of the stretching out feeling that Chiron brings. Okay, so it's been such a strange week. I've had these two dreams. The first one was about, well, it felt like it linked to Okyrhoe. And this is an excerpt from, I do some priestess reports and mermaid reports. And this is what I wrote about Okyrhoe from the oracular priestess report. Honoring the sanctity of your wisdom. So Okyrhoe is the daughter of Chiron, the wounded healer, and Chariklo, who are both centaurs. She comes from a powerful lineage. Chiron gained much knowledge from being wounded, and his pretty much invisible wife Chariklo had great powers of transformation. When they fell in love, she was a river mermaid, and she transformed herself into a centaur, moving from water to earth. Later, she transformed Chiron into a star. Okyrhoe was born with the gift of prophecy, but she blurts out in her youthfulness certain troubling but very accurate predictions, one of which was the wounding of her father to come. The gods were angered that she had spoken outside of the sanctuary about such things and turned her into a mare, never able to speak again. She became Pegasus in the stars on her death. So Okyrhoe in our birth chart represents, certain of these bodies may be more strong in other people's charts than not. But if you're here, Okyrhoe is almost certainly important in your energy field, because she is a gifted healer, really, and she has been this from her birth. I'm going to come out in my report again for a minute. So she's always had this incredible perception, oracular abilities. A prophetess is what she's called in those days. But for ourselves, we might think more like just having that sixth sense, that strong third eye, that perception when we were a child or an adolescent. But then we see something and we say it, and the adults in our world don't like it. It's like, don't talk about that. Let's brush that underneath the carpet. And it could be all sorts of things. It could be political realities. It could be, seeing where people were suffering, where others didn't seem to perceive that. It could be knowing when people were lying, or knowing when people were up to something, even though they said they weren't. So think about that. In your own contemplation of Okyrhoe, and you can look her up, as I say, on Chariklo and find out where she is. So hopefully some of you will know, and we can have a chat about that at the end, and your thoughts on this. And I actually was thinking about this last night, because there's this whole thing collectively that these gifts have been shut down through the witch hunts, and also through science, though. The science has kind of rubbished all of this, and we've been living in a very left-brained kind of world for the last 500 years. So many people with these gifts in their genes have, it's quite a small number of people, but it does feel like the gifts are coming back. And something like the Gene Keys dream arc is a very right-brained way of perceiving. Indigenous teachings, or from all around the world, are right-brained ways of being. And it's really more in the European cultures that it's almost like being completely wiped out and repressed, but it's definitely coming back. My great auntie was a white witch in Scotland, which is where the witch hunt started, actually. So I feel like I'm working sometimes very directly with this lineage of awakening these gifts again. And I'm sure if we all think back, sometimes we don't know, but we just know we have the gift. So it's somewhere there in our past, in our DNA. Okay, so let me tell you about the dream before I go back into this, because it's all a dream about repressed gifts. And we're going to be doing Pandora as well, has been calling the gifted one. So this feels like a big theme for healing at the moment, healing our gifts, seeing our gifts, bringing them into the world. And I've been on the cycle before, so if you've heard me say all this a few years back, it feels like the holograms come round again. We get in another layer of this energy. So in my dream, I've created this artwork, and there's 3 figures in it, sort of broadly a mother, father, child, but they're quite abstract. And then this other woman comes along, and we're chatting, and through her interaction, I put on this wavy brown string that looks like land. It almost looks like the symbol of Aquarius, actually. And then these big burly men come along. There's 4 of them, and they make this wardrobe for my piece of art. It's got wheels on. And I'm like really chuffed, here's my piece of art. It looks great. Everyone can see it. And then this guy comes out of nowhere, and he says, oh no, tells the burly guys, you need to put that away. And so it's like pushed into a corner. And I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this, but initially I don't have the courage to speak up and say, I don't want my artwork over there, I want it back here. And so I have this like inner struggle, and then I say to him, look, I don't want it in there, I want it out. And the men do actually bring it out, and it's a bit damaged, but I managed to like repair it. And I knew this dream was about Okyrhoe because I'd sort of kept waking up thinking about her, and it kept coming into my mind. I wasn't even going to do Okyrhoe today because I did her a few weeks back, and it was like she wants more to come through. And and also she was turned into a horse, and I had this extraordinary experience in a cacao ceremony the other day where this horse came out of a fire, and I feel that that was Okyrhoe, and it was almost like a soul retrieval of this Vesta priestess energy. And I feel it's not just me personally, but this field of the oracular priestess is strengthening, and this this Chiron North Node conjunction is part of that. So it's in the 51st gene key, which is actually all about initiation, and it goes from I've forgotten the shadow now, but it's the city of awakening. I think it's the shadow of agitation, actually, and that's the city of awakening. It's the shock kind of energy that we get with the 51, and its programming partner is the 57, which is this like intuitive knowing gene key, which is very powerful. Okay, let me go back into, there's not too much of this still to share. Okay, so I think I'm going to go back actually. Yeah, so let me share a bit about Chariklo. So I started dreaming about her last night. I'm like, what? They're both coming in a row, and I wasn't going to talk much about Chariklo either, but I made a connection with desire that we were writing about in Gene Key 30, the moth that's drawn to the flame and gets its wings burned. So when I was writing about this the other day, what came through was more about sexual desire being where felt I'd got my wings burned. But what I realized the last few days is how much my powerful desire to heal the wounded has got my wings burnt a few times. So like a hero victim kind of energy. I'm much more aware of it now than I used to be. But I still feel that powerful desire to serve as Chariklo did. So she basically, she's got these incredible healing powers. She turned herself into a centaur. Eventually, she turns Chiron into Alpha Centauri. So she's an incredible healer herself, and yet in the mythology, she's virtually invisible. We never hear about her, but we know she's there in the background, and she is Chiron's wife. She's there tending him, helping him, and kind of giving up her life for him. So I think it's when you have Chariklo, or depending on where you have Chariklo in your chart, it might tell you something about where you give up your life, like a sacrificial kind of energy towards others. But also I feel like where we need to be cautious in giving up our own gifts, feeling like we're being selfless when actually we're just feeling guilty and dutiful. And so we're kind of following a female programming, which is not necessarily the Aquarian programming. So it's something we're moving out of into more freedom now of choice. But it's a really powerful interplay of energies, that call of taking care of someone and walking your own path as well. And anyone who has children or older parents, I know that's been the case for some of us here, walking that fine line, and partners who maybe for whatever reason are physically, mentally, emotionally much more in need of our help than they might normally be. So Chariklo's taken me on quite a journey, really, of understanding. I don't know why this just kind of came in again, that where Chiron is discovered, the Sabian symbol is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This is a picture from where I live, actually. And rainbows are very elusive, aren't they? Sometimes they're coming down in the land, sometimes the water. But just when you feel like you found the end, it's kind of vanishes. So it's quite ethereal energy as well to these bodies. So where are they right now? Let's have a look at that. So Chiron is currently at 17 degrees Aries, which is gene key 51, line 3, leading from agitation to initiative to awakening. It's conjunct the North Node. Now, this is the karmic destiny. So it's a very powerful transit of Chiron right now. And interestingly, also the asteroid Gaia. So this isn't just about our human healing. This is also about Gaia's healing as well, and our relationship with Gaia. I thought I'd just mention, I love this, that the 51 is the thunder over thunder hexagram in the I Ching. So that gives you an idea of this rousing kind of storm-like energy. And that's what we're in right now. So be interesting to see what's going on for you that might reflect that thundery kind of awakening energy. So Chariklo, this is her number. So yeah, going back, Chiron is number 2026. And when you go down to Raka, they go in numerical order pretty much. So that's how you can find them, because there's a lot there. Chariklo is 10199. So I've mentioned this connection to immense transformational powers. When Chariklo was discovered, there was actually this incredible, like, six-pointed star. So she's become also associated with sacred geometry. At the moment, she's at 15 degrees Aquarius, which is gene key 13, line 3, leading from discord to discernment to empathy. I think this thing about discernment is a key point right now, discerning whether you're being a rescuer, what is the energy that you are offering to the other. Is it about you, or is it about them? And usually if we're kind of out of balance with Chariklo, the kind of need to serve others is this such powerful desire that it's a weird one, because it sounds like it should be always a good thing, but it isn't. So it can be very draining for poor old Chariklo when she's in her shadow. Okay, Okyrhoe is number 52872. So this is the daughter. So she's also in Aries. She's at 5 Aries, 10 minutes, which is gene key 17, line 2. So some of us here, I have my Chiron in the 17. I was born in 70. So Chiron spends a lot of time in Aries because of this weird shape. Aries and Taurus are signs where Chiron spends a lot of time. So some of us may actually have conjunctions with this. So Okyrhoe's conjunct my Chiron right now, basically. Leading from opinion to far-seeing to omniscience. So this is the gene key of seeing. Totally, it's all about far-seeing and omniscience. Interestingly, it's conjunct Pan, who's the nature god. So we have this interaction with earth energies again. Cyrene is another one of these oracular priestesses. Salacia, who is Neptune's wife, and she kind of really transforms Neptune from a sort of brute sexuality into a higher, more Poseidon. I think of Poseidon, and there's a hypothetical body called Poseidon, who is the higher frequency of Neptune, and feels like that's a transformational energy at work in the world. And Aesculapia, so Asclepius is the father of medicine, and actually Asclepius as a child was brought to Chiron as an orphan, and Chiron brought Asclepius up and Chariklo. And so it's another child, actually, but not a biological one, an adopted child and a human child. But Chiron teaches Asclepius everything he knows, and then Asclepius goes on to become the father of medicine. So it's always fascinating for me when there's other people in the mythical story that actually appear in the cosmos. It's like, wow. And then to mention, so the programming partner of the 17, which omniscience and far-seeing, is the 18, which has to do with the perfection of everything. And that's where there's quite a new one, I think, called Astro Wizard, is there? So Astro Wizard is kind of your skills with astrology. So I thought that was pretty cool, since astrology is definitely all about seeing as well. Okay, so I was playing with, there might be significance, I was playing with artificial art, and this is what it generated for me when I put in a centaur looking at a female centaur looking at the stars. And Okyrhoe does actually become Pegasus at her death. So it's interesting. It's kind of Pegasus up. Okay, so let me stop sharing that. I'm going to pause the recording and then invite you guys in to ask any questions, share where these bodies are in your chart. We can have a little chat about that. I can give you any insights if they come to me as well. And yeah, how are you feeling any of this intense healing energies? Is any of this ringing true for you, any of these themes? That would be good to know. I'll put the recording back to say something about that. So in human design and the gene keys, we're coming to the end of the crosser planning, which I think you actually have the crosser planning. And we're going to be moving into this background energy switch of the sleeping phoenix. So to me, the sleeping phoenix has always felt like a real dreaming kind of energy. So it's interesting, something like the dream arc is coming as part of this transmission of what the new energy is all about, is this interconnection with Gaia and the animals and the return of indigenous wisdom streams. And what is going out is this incredible way we've planned our world. So we get coffee and chocolate from other sides of the world, and you know, we live in this global kind of society, and so we're going to see some big changes, and predictions are really that things will become more and more localized, but we do become more and more like a human field. So things like nationalism become less and less important to humanity as time goes on. And part of this is a biological mutation of humanity. So, so in a sense, what we're trying to do is celebrate and bring forward the best that human beings have to offer. That's my interpretation anyway, is to be the best human, to celebrate the human. And then there will be a new human that mutates from our DNA, a kind of jump. I'm trying to remember what Richard Ross called us, Homo Sanctus. So he calls it Homo Sanctus, and one of the big fields we're working on really now is the solar plexus is absolutely key in this transition. So all this work we're doing now on kind of balancing the solar plexus, and it's not that we're going to carry on feeling emotions, but that's the key to living in a more balanced world, is this processing and balancing, being okay with emotion, really. And my understanding is Homo Sanctus won't be as emotional as the human we are now, but that's the area we kind of really are, is key to our success in making this transition gracefully. I think the transition is going to happen anyway. It's just how easily and effortlessly it happens. So just wanted to quickly mention, oh, go on.
Have you got any time? Because this is what I'm studying at the moment, so I just want to add a couple of things to it. Because we are in the 51. Can you hear me? Okay, so because we're looking at the 51, which is the gate of shock, you know, as you've said. And so it's okay for us to kind of shock us into spirit. We can shock ourselves into spirit because it is spirit through the cleaning of the emotions that we're doing through the solar plexus that we're going to be emoting with. So it's like when we say the emotion wave is changing, for those of us that are cleaning up the solar plexus, creating a background frequency. And like you said, the borders are diminishing, and we're creating a global family through generating a new background frequency. And probably the transition is going to be people separating themselves and coming in and out of that through, the of the shock, and the ability for them to reparent themselves through the 37 line 1, which then proceeds into the 55 line 6, which is about self-fullness. He calls it selfishness rather in the 56 line 6 in the Ray V Ching, but we can call it self-fullness because, as we know, he's very cynical about the change. But we're bringing into a higher frequency as we're deciding to spiral up into it. So yeah, it's the will to go it alone, the 51. It's called the gate of guts, and it's probably one of the most strongest gates out of the ego and the will center. Rousing the spirit after the endings 42, which is showing us about a surplus of resources and how much activity we can extend with those. But then there's this fine balance about like shocking us into, the new background frequency and how much we need those resources, and not having to increase them anymore. Yeah. Okay. I feel complete now. Thanks, Alison.
Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, Alison.
Yeah, Phoebe, that's the ring of humanity. I just looked for the codon. So it carries my Chiron, my pearl, my culture in that ring. So yeah, interesting.
Amazing.
Powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna be, yeah. I heard that the this eclipse, something came across me last night about Nevera. Anybody hear that? There's 7 cities that this eclipse goes over called Nevera or something like that. And it's going to be there's like a prophecy with it.
It sounds
So,
like Nibiru, but it's not, is it?
yeah, I don't know how to spell it. I have it written down. I just got middle of the night. I got up to get this information. Be guided to it. So
I bet we'll be doing a transmission for that, won't we, Alison?
Yeah, I was going to say we're gonna the class in 2 weeks actually falls on the eclipse date, the 25th of March. So we'll have a closer look, and I got that email too. So I'm gonna,
yeah.
I can see the eclipse path going over America, and I haven't looked at it closely yet, but it looks interesting. As far as I know, that name Neve or Nevehe comes from ancient Sumeria. But anyway, if we all look into it, we'll know what it's about by the time it will
Right.
end.
Yeah, it just fresh to me. It's not even so.
Yeah, me
Been
too.
writing for hours. That's just what happens. They waken me and I just write.
I wanted to just quickly share, like when you were sharing, Pat, I had a memory come back of when I think my Okyrhoe moment was of being shut down, actually, because I used to horse ride a lot, horses, and I had a dream that my riding instructor died, and then he actually committed suicide about 5 days later, and I think I was about 10 at the time, and it totally freaked me out. You know, I was like really freaked out, and I told my parents about anyone I told about the dream, it's like they couldn't hear me. And so I had to kind of hold this on my own, that I somehow knew this person was going to die and there was nothing I could do. So yeah, have a think about anything like that that may have happened when you were young, those kind of points where you might feel really uncomfortable about having these gifts, you know, because you don't just see good things, do you? You see everything, so that's quite hard to see everything. And anyway, we're coming up to the end, and I want to go to body talk. So with Danny, so we're going to finish on time, and next week, I think we're doing Pandora next week, the gifted one. Very excited about her. So have a look on Taraka where your Pandora is. She's number 55 as well, which I think is significant. And Gene Key of Freedom. And yes, I'll catch you all soon. And it's lovely to see you. Thank you for coming. Well, bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
See you
Lovely.
soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.